Tried to turn that job down.
Are you serious?
Multiple times.
That's so funny.
And I was like, I know they talk so much politics on the show, and I'm not comfortable with that, so no.
I'd stop calling it a lie.
Okay.
Well, here's what it says. It's a precedent for all of us to open our eyes because we've elected someone who is in a similar situation, who didn't have a drug problem, who knew what he was doing, who clearly stood and said, I can do this, and he did it.
Candace Cameron Bure says she never even wanted to join The View. She turned it down again and again, but producers kept sweetening the deal. Promises of fun celebrity gossip, no heavy politics, even free flights every week. Sounds perfect, right? But here's the twist. The moment Donald Trump's name started driving ratings, every single promise went out the window. Overnight, the light-hearted show turned into a political war zone. And Candace? She was the lone conservative voice, set up as the target, night after night. And once you hear what she went through, you'll never see The View the same way again. Ever notice how some TV shows claim to bring different perspectives but somehow end up sounding like the same voice on repeat? The View is a perfect example. And if you think that's an exaggeration, wait until you hear what Candace Cameron Bure recently revealed about her time on the show. It makes the behind-the-scenes feel less like daytime TV and more like a political battleground. Here's the backdrop. Candace, best known from Full House, spent 2 years as the so-called token conservative on The View. Translation? She was basically the designated target for pushback. Funny thing is, she never even wanted the gig. She turned it down multiple times, saying politics just wasn't her thing. But the producers wouldn't take no for an answer. They sweetened the deal, assuring her it would stay light-hearted, focused on celebrity chatter, not heavy political sparring. They even offered weekly flights from LA to New York so she wouldn't have to uproot her life. Sounds like a dream package, right? Big platform, daily TV exposure, travel perks. But here's the twist. None of it was true.
I tried to turn that job down.
Are you serious?
Multiple times.
That's so funny.
And I was like, I know they talk so much politics on the show, and I'm not comfortable with that, so no. And then they came back and they were like, we're actually switching it. It's going to be more pop culture, more evergreen topics. We're not really going to talk about politics that much. And it was like, okay. And then I was like, well, I live in LA and I'm not moving to New York, so no. And they said, we'll fly you back and forth every week. We'll pay for the tickets every week.
The biggest open door.
They just kept upping the ante. Like everything I tried to say no to, they had a solution.
The moment Donald Trump's name started driving ratings, all those promises of light topics went straight out the door. Overnight, the show shifted from celebrity gossip to full-blown political crossfire. And who got caught in the middle of the storm? Candace. If you've ever tuned into The View, you know how it works on paper. 5 women, 5 perspectives. But in practice, it's usually 4 liberals circling one lone conservative who's forced into defense mode episode after episode. And even when that one conservative voice tries to speak, they're usually drowned out by interruptions, crosstalk, and an audience eager to cheer for the other side. Fair debate? Hardly. It's about as balanced as a seesaw with a sumo wrestler on one side and a toddler clinging onto the other.
If I'm not wrong, because I don't know too much about The View, but I've seen definitely like some controversial clips online or on YouTube. Yeah. That's a primarily liberal audience.
Oh yeah, it is. That whole show started and it's called The View because it's supposed to be 5 different viewpoints.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty much one viewpoint.
That's what I picked up.
Yeah, there's usually like one token conservative. So I was that conservative for 2 years on this show.
But going into it, you knew that you were going to be that kind of token.
Candace revealed that every single night felt like cramming for the hardest test of her life. She'd spend hours, sometimes 4 or more, preparing to cover nearly 80 different topics. 80. Every day. Picture trying to study for an exam without knowing what questions will even show up. That was her reality for 2 years straight. It wasn't just about memorizing facts, it was the emotional toll that came with it. She explained how the process worked. Each night, she'd receive a massive packet with dozens of current event topics, constantly shifting with the news cycle. Her job? Research every single one so she wouldn't get blindsided on air. By morning, she and the other hosts would sit with producers, narrowing that list down to maybe 7 or 8 topics that would actually make it into the episode. But here's the part that stung the most. Even after all that work, sometimes she wasn't even allowed to share her real opinion. Producers would step in, pushing her to deliver the version of her take they wanted for the show. So much for The View. At times, it felt less like genuine conversation and more like following a script. Candace admitted the stress was unlike anything she'd ever faced. She described it as walking into a show where she often felt unprepared, not because she hadn't done the work, but because the emotional weight made her second-guess everything. Some days, she didn't even feel comfortable sharing her true thoughts out loud. And let's be real, this problem isn't new. Look at Alyssa Farah Griffin, the current conservative at The View. Ever notice how she rarely pushes back? It's not that she doesn't have opinions. It's that the game is rigged from the start. When the crowd boos at anything right of center, when your co-hosts treat you like the villain of the day, when producers already expect you to play a certain role, how much room is left to actually be yourself? And then there's Whoopi Goldberg. If we're talking chaos, she's usually right in the middle of it. She has a knack for bending over backwards to defend the Bidens, while practically foaming at the mouth anytime Donald Trump's name is mentioned. One moment, she's shouting about how much she cares for kids, demanding tax credits, paid family leave, free healthcare. But when the Trump administration rolled out actual relief proposals, suddenly she wasn't satisfied. Fast forward to today, as birth rates decline, the White House has floated new incentives, things like $5,000 cash bonuses for new parents and expanded IVF access. Whoopi's response: total outrage. Instead of debating the merits, she dismissed it outright, saying it was an insult and proof that lawmakers don't understand women's bodies. Candace's takeaway was simple. The View was never really about facts, it was about fireworks. Drama, not discussion. And when you look at it that way, it explains everything. The producers weren't chasing nuanced conversations, they were chasing viral clips and next-day headlines. Think about it. What's more likely to pull in ratings? A calm exchange about the economy, or Whoopi Goldberg screaming about Trump for the 10th time that week? Exactly. Once they realized Trump was their golden goose, his name had to be shoehorned into almost every conversation. Didn't matter if the topic was cooking tips or celebrity divorces, say Trump, and suddenly the set turned into chaos. But the real poison came from the audience. Candace said that no matter how thoughtful or reasonable her comments were, the crowd was primed to groan, sigh, or roll their eyes at her. And that wasn't random. The audience was carefully curated to act like a live jury, booing anything conservative, cheering anything liberal. Imagine walking into that environment day after day, trying to speak your mind while both your co-hosts and the audience treated you like the villain. That's not a debate, it's an ambush. And yet, she did her best. She prepped like she was cramming for finals every single night, and leaned on a few close friends who'd call her every morning to help her sharpen her takes. Politics wasn't her strong suit. She admitted her family barely talked about it at home, so in a way, she was learning on the fly. But with faith, friends, and a ton of grit, she pushed through, even when the deck was stacked against her. Candace said she relied on a few close friends who would call her every morning, spending an hour helping her prep before the cameras rolled. But here's the bigger question. If a show claims to celebrate diverse viewpoints, yet stacks the deck against anyone who thinks differently, is that really diversity? Or is it just propaganda with commercial breaks? I'll let you answer that one in the comments, because I already know where I stand. And make no mistake, this isn't just about Candace Cameron Bure. It's a pattern. Every conservative who's ever taken that seat has ended up burned out, silenced, or forced to walk away. Why? Because the role isn't about adding perspective. It's about survival. With Whoopi Goldberg, Joy Behar, and Sunny Hostin often ganging up like it's a 3-on-1 cage match, there's hardly a fair shot. Even the strongest arguments get cut off, mocked, or drowned out until the audience barely remembers what the conservative co-host was even trying to say. This isn't dialogue, it's theater. Candace admitted that her natural instinct isn't to throw punches. She avoids conflict when she can. She craves resolution and calm conversation. But calm doesn't trend. Calm doesn't go viral. The producers wanted drama, shouting matches, explosive moments, and clips they could plaster online with titles like, "Whoopi destroys conservative co-host." That's the business model, and it works. Just not for the person stuck in the hot seat. Candace put it best herself, when you're under pressure, people talk about fight or flight. She confessed she's naturally a flight person. Not because she's scared of conflict, but because she values peace. Resolution. Clarity. Unfortunately for her, The View is designed for the opposite. Candace has always been open about her personality, She likes direct conversations and resolution, not heated brawls. Her instinct isn't to throw on boxing gloves, it's to step back, stay calm, and keep her composure. And in some ways, that temperament helped her. When the attacks came, she didn't snap back or lose control. She simply refused to play the shouting game. But then comes the hypocrisy. When Hunter Biden's scandals surfaced, Whoopi Goldberg and the panel bent over backwards to defend him, brushing off the controversy. Yet the second Donald Trump's name entered the mix, it was DEFCON 1. Calls for investigations, arrests, non-stop outrage. The double standard wasn't just obvious, it was insulting. And the worst part, millions of viewers soaked it up daily, convinced they were watching balanced discussion when, in reality, it was political theater dressed up as conversation. That's the danger of The View. It isn't just a talk show, it's a cultural megaphone. And when that megaphone only amplifies one side while silencing the other, audiences walk away believing they've seen the full picture, when all they've really heard is one narrative repeated louder and louder. Eventually, Candace walked away. She admitted she doesn't miss it one bit. She still loves talk shows and hosting, but The View? That was draining in a way she'd never experienced before. 2 years of non-stop stress, pressure, and bias will wear anyone down. She even joked that she learned more about politics during those years than at any other point in her life, because she had no choice but to learn, just to survive. Her own words sum it up best. "I don't miss The View at all. I love being on talk shows. I love hosting. But that job, talking politics every single day, was the hardest thing I've ever done." Candace also shared that, out of everything, the easiest part for her was talking about her faith. Christianity gave her a sense of strength and peace in an environment that otherwise felt hostile. But today, she says she's happy to be away from that show, free to focus on lighter topics, and free from the constant political crossfire. And here's the big takeaway: The View isn't about different viewpoints. It's about controlling the narrative. Conservatives aren't invited to be heard. They're invited to be humiliated, tokenized, or silenced. Producers decide the talking points, the audience is stacked against you, and the co-hosts gang up to create the illusion of debate. What you're really watching is a partisan echo chamber dressed up as conversation. So let me ask you, do shows like The View actually help political dialogue in this country? Or do they just make the divide worse? Drop your thoughts in the comments, because I want to know what you think. Before we wrap, I want to circle back to something Candace said that really struck me. She admitted she's not a fighter by nature. She doesn't thrive on conflict. What she values is resolution, honesty, and directness. And that's the heart of the issue here. Real conversations are supposed to be about listening and understanding, not shouting people down. But The View thrives on conflict. And until that changes, no conservative on that stage will ever truly be heard. So, what do you think? Is The View salvageable, or is it a lost cause at this point? That's the million-dollar question. On the surface, the idea of The View sounds great. Bring together people from different backgrounds, with different beliefs, and let them hash out the big issues of the day in front of a live audience. In theory, that's exactly the kind of thing we need more of: actual dialogue, a chance to understand where the other side is coming from, and maybe even discover some common ground. But in practice, what do we get? A show that thrives not on resolution, but on conflict. A stage where balance isn't really balance at all, it's 4 voices on one side, stacked against a single person on the other. And that's where the real problem lies. When a program claims to be about diversity of thought but structures itself in a way that silences dissent, can we really call it diverse? Or is it just entertainment disguised as political conversation? I'd argue it's the latter. And I think deep down, many of you would agree. Because let's be honest, if the tables were turned, if it were 4 conservatives steamrolling 1 liberal every day, the outrage would be deafening. Yet somehow, when the imbalance cuts the other way, the show gets praised as progressive and necessary. That double standard is part of why trust in media is at an all-time low. Now, the second question, would you ever want to see a real balanced version of The View? Imagine it for a moment. Instead of pitting people against each other just to create viral clips, what if producers actually sought out co-hosts who wanted to listen, not just talk? What if the format rewarded thoughtful dialogue instead of shouting matches? What if the audience was truly representative of the nation, not just stacked with one political leaning to clap for one side and boo the other? That version of the show could be revolutionary. It could model how adults can disagree passionately without demeaning each other. It could set an example of how tough conversations can actually lead somewhere productive instead of just creating another round of internet outrage. The sad truth is, the producers don't seem interested in that kind of show. Conflict drives ratings. Viral moments get clicks. Drama fuels headlines. A calm, respectful exchange about healthcare or the economy doesn't spread like wildfire on social media, but Whoopi Goldberg yelling at a conservative host. That will be clipped, captioned, and shared 1 million times by morning. So, the business model rewards chaos, and the culture of the show follows suit. That's why, time and time again, conservatives brought onto the panel end up burned out, silenced, or eventually walking away. The setup isn't designed for dialogue, it's designed for drama. And that brings us back to Candace Cameron Bure. Her experience isn't just her story, it's a reflection of what happens anytime a conservative sits in that chair. Alyssa Farah Griffin is going through her own version of it right now. Meghan McCain went through it before. The pattern is always the same. They are positioned as the other, treated as the villain of the day, and expected to either play defense non-stop or fall in line with what the producers want them to say. It's not conversation, it's survival. And eventually, survival mode wears you down. So here's the bigger takeaway. Shows like The View don't just fail the hosts who sit at the table. They fail the audience too. Millions of people tune in, thinking they are watching a balanced exchange of ideas, when in reality they are being spoon-fed one side of the narrative. That creates the illusion of fairness without delivering the reality of it. And when audiences walk away thinking, well, that's what both sides said today, they are really just walking away with one side amplified and the other side silenced. That's not just misleading, it's dangerous. Because it deepens the divide instead of helping to bridge it. Now, could The View ever be fixed? Maybe, but it would require a total shift in priorities, from chasing clicks to actually caring about conversation. It would mean hiring hosts who are genuinely open-minded, not just performers reading their lines. It would mean treating every voice with respect, not setting one person up as the punching bag. And it would mean trusting the audience to appreciate thoughtful discussion instead of assuming they only want fireworks. Do you think the producers have the courage to make that change? Honestly, I'm not sure. But if they ever did, it could be one of the most important shows on television. Until then, here's where we stand. The View is a cultural megaphone that claims to represent diversity, but in reality, it amplifies one perspective while drowning out the other. And that's why so many people walk away from it frustrated, disillusioned, or simply done. Candace Cameron Bure's story is just one example of what happens behind the curtain, but it shines a light on the bigger truth. So, what do you think? Is The View salvageable? Or is it simply too far gone? Could it ever become the kind of balanced, respectful platform this country so badly needs? And if not, what does that say about where our media is headed in general? I want to hear your thoughts, so drop them down in the comments. That's where we'll wrap things up for today. If you enjoyed this breakdown, don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe for more deep dives, and share this video with someone who needs to hear the truth about The View. Thanks so much for watching, and as always, I'll see you in the next one.